I was in the middle of a project when I realized I could be filming this. So here I am with a little table set up in the middle of the laundry room, because we are currently repainting and recarpeting the living room, which means my usual workspace is full of a bunch of extra chairs and boxes. One of these days, I'm going to have to clean. Or just find a new space to work in? But I'll cross that bridge when I get there. For now, I'm still working on this episode of Songs of Survival. The first two episodes, which date back several years, were basically just extended action sequences. I wanted to test out my short film animation style, and I needed to start somewhere, so I really didn't want to overthink it. This episode that I'm currently producing is the one where I actually have to tell a story and get some world building across. And one of the ways that I'm trying to do that is by putting more work into the set design so that hopefully that history comes across through the screen. One piece of the set that I need to build is a big table. But not just a big table, a table that can be destroyed and reconstructed into a sort of throne, but you can still tell it's a table. Now, normally when I make miniature furniture, I just glue together a bunch of popsicle sticks and call it good. But if I do that here, and then I try to break the table, it's just gonna break apart at all the glue seams. Which means I actually have to make a pretty solid table so that when I destroy it, it comes across as natural. I've got the tabletop. I glued these two pieces together with this one on the back, and then I drove a row of nails into each side. I'm realizing now that I will want to stain and varnish this when I get it all made, and it might have been a good idea to not put in the nails until after that process, because then the nail heads would stand out from the varnish. But since I've already done it, I'm just gonna keep doing it, and that way I can just focus on making the table first and then painting it later. I cut out a bunch of these leg pieces using a bandsaw, and that was the first time that I ever used a bandsaw. My grandpa, who passed away last year, had a bunch of woodworking tools in his garage, and I've been trying to find a use for them. He said that the bandsaw didn't work, but we're thinking he just had the wrong blades in it because we bought new blades and got it working pretty quickly. It was a little tricky to cut around these corners. The first time I tried to do it, I just went straight into it, started going around this curve with the saw blade. My dad walks up behind me, is like, hold up, and then I jump, kind of pull back on it because I instinctively wanted to like pull the piece away from the saw blade, but then that just made the whole thing catch and slip off the wheel. That actually happened to me a couple times. The blade got stuck and it popped off the wheel, so I had to open up the casing and string it back up there and get to work again. Eventually I did figure out how to not do that. One thing that I figured out is that I could start by cutting a V in it. That way I could do a straight line and then back out easily, and then move and cut another straight line and then back out of that. And once I had a chunk cut out of there, then I could make several passes and just whittle down the wood until it lined up with my mark. But that still left a lot of rough and jagged cut marks. I did get smoother as I went along, but there's still all this fuzzy stuff that I need to take off with the Dremel. I have 6 of these, but I only need 4. So after I get them all cleaned up, I'm gonna pick my favorites and then just kind of glue them on the table like that. Somewhere. I guess they're, yeah, 4. Glue them on like, whoop. Something like that.
2 weeks later.
And we're back. And in the regular old workspace, because the walls have been painted and the carpet has been carpeted.
I didn't know he was gonna rub his damn cheek on it.
It's been long enough I can't actually remember where we were when I left off. But here's where we are now. I glued on all of these table legs. I was originally gonna nail them all in, but I did a test and found out that this wood splits pretty easily. Plus, I could never really figure out how I was gonna nail it in, because my thought originally was that I could put a nail in going from the top, but then I don't know exactly where it's gonna end up on the backside, and then I can't figure out how to, like, I wouldn't really be able to nail in like that. So I decided the wood glue would be enough. I don't need to go to that much work. And once everything was constructed, I stained it and varnished it, and I even added little fake blood splatters. And now, I guess it's time to destroy it. So I made a miniature axe. Actually, I made 2 of them, plus a mace. I would talk a little more about how I made these, but I don't want to clog up this video, so I think I'll save that for a later date. My thinking was, I don't want this miniature table to have big axe marks. I want it to have little axe marks. I mean, even this is pretty sizable in comparison to my figures. Like, this would be a pretty big blade, but like, I don't expect it to be that noticeable. I just need something that looks a little more choppy. Cause like, if I go after this with a big axe, like, I'm gonna get through there in a couple chops. I want it to look like this was hacked away by an entire revolution's worth of axes. Also, I think I'm stalling. I also made this, which is kind of just another table, but it's basically supposed to serve as an anvil so that I can beat stuff up on it and not risk chopping up this table. I'm sorry, table. I don't know where to land the first blow. Doesn't really seem like it's doing as much as I thought it would. I guess I should have expected those to break first. For some reason, I wasn't. We have our first casualty. And our second. This is not breaking how I expected it to break. I mean, I didn't want it to break at the seams where I put it together, and it's not. But like, I thought this, I mean, I guess I didn't want it to be too sharp because I didn't want it to be super dangerous, and it's not like this is really like tempered metal or anything. It's just scrap metal I had lying around, and I welded it to a piece of pipe. I didn't think I'd need that much, but you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and sharpen this thing a little more, and then I'll see what I can do. I also think I may not limit myself to just the axe. I'll play around a little bit. So after worrying that my axes weren't chopping good enough, I kind of overcompensated by hitting harder. In the end, the table was actually in more pieces than I intended, which meant I had to sort of reconstruct it a little bit before making it into a throne. Because in my head, like, I wanted something similar to like the Game of Thrones posters with that throne, but I wanted you to still be able to tell that it used to be a table. That was the idea that I was going for. So I took all the pieces, kind of put them back together, used hot glue, super glue, and some nails to keep them together. It was a little tricky because hot glue does not stick to the varnish. So like most of the time, the varnish had gotten beat up enough that I was able to stick. If not, like I could sand the surface and that would help. It was frustrating me a little bit when I would have one part of it glued together and I would go to glue another part of it on, but then like the pressure required to glue the new piece on ended up pushing the old piece out of whack. But it's not like it has to look pretty or anything. It's supposed to look kind of jagged and not necessarily unappealing, but like it's supposed to look rough and maybe a little dangerous. But yeah, this is what I ended up with. It's fairly sturdy. I definitely wouldn't want to drop it, but it seems like it's holding together well enough so far. I tried to put a little more fake blood on it, but it dries pink. This was the food coloring water stuff that I was using, and I made sure that it was very brownish because I wanted it to dry brown. It dries bright pink, so still gonna need to figure that out. I realize now that I forgot to take a picture of it while it was still a table, because I was gonna use that in the thumbnail. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do now, because it'll depend on if I have a good enough shot of it just with the regular filming. But anywho, it's a throne. My dad saw me working on the table while I was like varnishing it and stuff like that. And he was a little sad that I was gonna destroy it. That's why I was very upfront that, okay, I'm making this to destroy it, because I didn't want anyone to freak out when I suddenly start taking an axe to my beautiful creation. I do feel a little bad, because it was a nice little table, but I don't really know what I'd do with a little table anyway, so this way it serves a purpose.